Yes.
Often people might not consider, well, what I've been thinking about lately is how to explain the potentials in objects as information, describing it as information in a mathematical-ish sort of way, and just trying to quantify possibility within an object as information. I'm basically just saying, how do I express the possibilities in an object, or the nature of an object in terms of what it can do and what it is? Like, how do I express that as information, like the quantity? I'm trying to make it a simpler way to express it.
Well, I got it. I think I got it. You can tell me. But my question then is, but aren't you, so when you're talking about potential, you're talking about the nature of some entity, let's say, right? And
yeah, what Peacock meant
understanding
as metaphysical possibility, like
Right.
planes have the capacity to fly. So that would quantify some amount of information implied
Yes.
by a plane as an entity. So I was
But then-
quantifying that.
But when you say, okay, so you're focusing, but let's say something has a certain nature, isn't
Yes.
when things have a certain nature, isn't that part of, like, nature is a kind of attribute. So isn't it the case that not all, like, you can't, well, I'm just thinking about quantification, because I guess you don't mean numerically, because that's what I was thinking about. So
I mean,
numerical
absolutely.
is one attribute. So mathematical would be one aspect of an attribute maybe, but then to quantify is broader, right? So, okay.
I'm making it more specific, even a more measurable quantity, not just like a category, but that you can express it as a number, that you can measure it in a objective way, that information could be like, it's on or on, that a plane can either fly or not fly. Or you can say the capacity to fly is a bit of information. In the same way you talk about, like, messages have information in them, or DNA has information.
Right.
You say it's how many bits it has. And I think the bits or information can be expressed as, what can an entity do? What's its causal nature? So I'm taking that to then understand human cognition, as in, if cognition is processing information about the world, I could quantify maybe the way people have concepts. What concepts can they hold? And from there, I think I can make a more specific theory about free will to express, is free will some way of processing information, or is information processing understanding the capacities of an object? Is that really what shapes free will? That our understanding of the world is what is free will is not just a capacity we have, but it's something that is expressed just our very interaction with the world implies free will.
So what I got was, you're trying to create, it's like a model. Basically, it's a model, right? And then you're just quantifying different aspects of an entity that you know and that you're aware of, and put it in numerical terms on a computer. That's what I got.
Yeah, that it could be expressed that way, or that the ability to do that is why we can process information volitionally. That something about our volition is dealing with that information, figuring out what it is.
Ability to do what? Our ability to do
Concept formation.
Oh,
and the
okay.
way concept formation is, Rand said, is measurement omission. And I'm saying all things have a measurement in this sense. And that's the connection. But everything has a quantity or some quantifiable thing to it. And that's what Rand would be very compatible with Rand, with measurement and mission.
Right.
All concepts are formed by some implicit measurement involved. And so this would be a connection between metaphysics and epistemology.
And so you're gonna the purpose is, no, sorry. What you want to do is you want to put all knowledge we have of consciousness onto a computer model to then, including metaphysical, well, it would all be metaphysical possibilities, since if you're creating a model, that's all you're doing.
Yeah, in one way,
And then you're
that's
trying
one
to
direction.
learn.
Another
Okay.
direction is just, how do I demonstrate the nature of free will? How do I make a better argument for it? An argument people may have not considered before, because they didn't before consider information processing as free will.
Right.
And it might be useful because I think I have a lead on it because of Rand talking about measurement omission.
Right.
So if everything can be quantified, and quantifying is really what cognition is, according to Rand, it would seem free will has something to do with doing something with information.
But when you create consciousness on a PC or a model for consciousness, how do you, if awareness is irreducible, how do you quantify awareness? Well, awareness is an action, so I don't know, this is confusing,
Right.
but how do you like, you can't recreate consciousness on a PC, like, but aspects of it you can, is what I understand.
Yeah, but that's really secondary. My
Okay.
interest is really just, what is information?
Okay.
How do we define it? In what way does that connect metaphysics to epistemology?
Okay.
And in what way can that ground how we do concept formation?
Right.
And if it does ground concept formation, maybe volition is a type of information processing, and that's all it is. You don't like that you're being volitional is processing information.
Right. Okay. So you'll create a concept forming machine.
That it feels like something to process information. Yeah, if my theory is true. I mean, this is where it's full as far as philosophy, I think. But
Right.
it's a way of thinking about reality that I don't think people have considered, or not enough. And it's a great answer, great way to think about free will and consciousness.
As information processing.
Yes.
But what differentiates that from free will is simply the choice to be is awareness, as in the choice to, well, I don't know how to even put it, the selective focus. Free will is selective focus. Because in a sense, any focus is information processing, right? So what if you create a model, what does that, I didn't fully get what that adds. Like if yeah.
Not sure yet how to argue it, but really the main idea here is that I'm trying to use old information to have new answers to old problems, like the problem of consciousness, the hard problem. They say, why does it feel like something to be conscious? And people have people argue about it all the time. So I think I have a new idea that I can go with here, and that's involved with taking other fields like philosophy, psychology, information theory, but not all expertise. Like, I don't do all the math of communication technology, but I get it abstractly. I don't know all the details of neurology, but I get it abstractly. So there's something there that I can use, even if I don't have the full understanding. So I'm thinking more on a theoretical level with many subjects, and it's harder to explore with directly, but I can with different technology or things about psychology. I just find different ways. That's all.
I got it. I can see, okay, I can see how that's an example of a new solution to old problem. I didn't fully follow because the reason I didn't fully follow actually is because I didn't fully get the question or the problem of qualia, which we don't need to go into because it will take me a while, but I know that like the question of what does it feel like, why does it feel to be conscious is,
yes.
I don't want to get into that though. So
that's
why I can't understand. I don't understand
that's
the
big part of the thing I'm answering. So yeah.
Right. Makes sense then. I don't fully get it. But okay, so that's an example of new solution to old problem, and you need it because, no, sorry, the only way you can get there is with a conceptual understanding, a method of memorizing generalizations while very useful for deductive applications. And in many tasks, that might be what you need to emphasize. Like if you're learning music, it is memorizing, say, certain rote movements, right?
Somewhat, yeah.
Or if you're learning maths in university, I don't know, I could be wrong. I'm just free thinking here. If you're learning maths in university, in order to pass tests, you have to rote memorize. You might not be able to conceptually understand everything. And so that's deductive application. But then if you want to answer a problem that people have been asking for a long time and in a different way, that's when you need understanding and inductive.
Yes.
Okay, I get it. And I pasted these from my notes on the Art of Thinking lecture. So he said, someone asked in the Q&A period, a standard proof is itself an item of knowledge arrived at by induction, but we don't have a theory of induction. So Peikoff said, we don't have an explicit theory, but we use the hypothetical deductive method, which is you hypothesize behavior on the basis of a theory. So the important part is here, you hypothesize, and for you to hypothesize on the basis of the theory, you need to understand the theory because you're doing something new, right? There's no deduction in that process of a hypothesis, or at least I'm not aware of any deductive process. You'd need to be integrating to come up with a hypothesis, integrating horizontally as opposed to, reducing vertically. Is that what you do when you're deducing? I don't think are you reducing vertically? It's still integration. You need to unify a specific instance with a generalization. But if I'm hypothesizing, is that induction or deduction?
Hypothesizing, I don't know which it really is either. You're hypothesizing. I don't know if that's either. I don't know what to
Okay.
call that.
And okay, I need to think about, you need to go from specific instances. No, I think it would be induction, because induction is you go from specific instances to, if I'm creating a theory of consciousness, like if I say consciousness, awareness, the feeling of awareness is information processing.
I would say, yeah, it's
Yeah.
a deductive hypothesis. Yeah, that makes sense.
And the particular instances can be broad generalizations, but you're still jumping from a whole bunch of broad generalizations to a new one. But deduction would be specific instance united under a generalization, right?
Yeah,
So
I think
like
so.
all men are mortal, Socrates is a man. This was the example from the Art of Thinking. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. That's integration, but it's deduction because you're subsuming Socrates is mortal under the generalization of all men are mortal. It's all subsumed under that one generalization. But anyway, yeah, that's the example that I had in mind.
Yeah, then you could say your theory is all men are mortal. Then you say, this is Daniel. Is he mortal? You test the theory. Wait till he dies. Like, if he doesn't die, your theory is false. If he does die, theory is true.
All right.
Repeat. But I don't know if that's not the only method. I think it's dangerous to say you can only hypothesize in a valid way from an existing theory. I mean, I'm not sure if he's trying to say that this is the method you have to use, or it's just a method you may use.
Well, the notes, I don't know how accurate my notes are. I wrote what I thought. I think he said something like that, but he could have meant it, because it was spoken, it could mean that he's talking about hypothesizing as a process of thinking, and then on the basis of a theory which you might inductively reach, which is hypothesis. I don't know, but I'm not sure there. But the thing I wanted to bring up was, he says this leaves possible the question of other possible explanations, and thus you have cases of legitimate disagreement in complex scientific fields. which brings me back to this, what you said, new solutions to old problems. Is that the case where you'll have in, let's say in cognitive psychology, you have a theory and it explains something, it does seem to have a predictive value, but then someone else, like you could come up with another, like as you say, solution to an old problem, because we're using the hypothetical deductive method, and it leaves possible question of other possible explanations. So you can and should try come up with other explanations.
Yeah, the difficulty is, say, imagine someone like Newton. It wasn't just that he found a particular answer to a particular problem. It's not that there's an existing theory, he used it and solved a problem. He couldn't use that to get anywhere. He ended up a new theory. He couldn't hypothesize from a theory. There'd be no way. He has to just have the new theory.
Right.
Like, it doesn't answer how do you come up with a theory? Yeah, you can do that with a theory if you have the theory.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't know then. But anyway, that's what he said in the lecture. But I get what you're saying.
But is a theory
that
just something
you could say Newton, as you describe it, theorized on the basis of particular instances, or induced a theory on them. But
yeah, it wasn't as if, it's not like he was work the same work he always did. He discovered a new framework of thinking entirely with gravity, that he didn't come up with it based on existing theories or propositions. He made a new discovery, integrated information, came up with a theory, couldn't just test, developed the theory anyway. And a theory isn't just what you imagine it ought to be based on evidence. And that's where it gets tricky, because you don't want to say it's hypothetical. Deductive is the only way, because that assumes you need your theory before you test anything.
Well, how about this interpretation? So the theory is what you induce, and you hypothesize behavior, meaning you create that. You can interpret what he's saying is hypothesizing behavior is creating a prediction on the basis of your theory, and then you test that prediction. And you could interpret it that way too. So the theory is the thing the person induces. So in this case, Newton.
Yes.
Hypothesizing behavior is then creating an experiment that predicts behavior, which you can test. What about that interpretation?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds more agreeable. If Peacock didn't agree with that, I just disagree with him, but I think it's partly true, at least.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me. And that's why you can have new solutions to old problems that already have solutions to them, right? Because we're using this hypothetical deductive method. We create a theory, we induce a theory, but someone else can induce another theory and it still manages to explain an old problem.
Yeah.
Maybe shed a new light on it, because if you go with objectivist epistemology, then new thought doesn't contradict old thought unless that there's a problem with the method in the old thought. So anytime you do find a new solution to an old problem, then you are, when that you've reached through induction, even if the problem is already solved, then you necessarily add information. Am I right in saying that? Or add useful knowledge?
Well, I think sometimes you could still add useful knowledge even without induction, in the sense that, I don't want to say that, don't scratch that. You can add
no, it makes sense. That's what Peikoff said.
But
it says even deduction is integration.
Okay, well, I'm just rephrasing what I'm thinking. So you have, what was I going to say? I had it. Oh, I know. Like, you could have a specific question motivated by a specific theory. Like, based on this theory of sleep, with depriving somebody, like my hypothesis is that depriving somebody with sleep will make it harder for them to remember their environment, or reduce their short-term memory based on that theory. And you test it out, and then it confirms the theory. You could say that that hypothesis was deductive, and it confirmed the theory. It adds information in the sense that you added some validation of the theory but it's
Right.
not coming up with something new to add to it. It's not a new analysis, a new method, a new theory, but it's still improving the theory. It's not advancing really the field as much as, well, a small advancement, but not in the same way that of a new framework entirely. So yeah, throughout this, the model of, or the theory about sleep, and then make up a theory of memory instead, that sleep is just one aspect of the theory or something like that, rather than the core of it, things like that.
Okay. I didn't fully follow that. So
Well,
when you I thought so, okay, maybe I know what I'm confused about. I'm confused about so standard of proof, because I'm thinking like this, you're talking about sleep theory. Is that
yeah,
I'm just where I'm confused is not necessarily related to what you're saying. It's that the hypothetical deductive method is how we reach a standard of proof. Is that or is
no, it is a standard of proof, or it is a
okay,
standard of coming up with a hypothesis,
right, to prove that
a
certain
particular theory, or add to the theory, but it's not a new theory, of course. You're not changing the theory, or you're adding to the theory
right,
rather than creating a new one.
okay,
And a new theory would be like Newton understands gravity, or Einstein understands space-time. That changes a lot about the
right,
theories. The theories are just maybe one instance of this bigger theory, and that you're not really just hypothesizing as Einstein, you're like hypothesizing a new theory. So you can hypothesize about like a specific prediction about as implied by a theory, or you
yeah,
can hypothesize about an entire theory maybe,
right,
which isn't just predicting a one outcome, but it's an integration of many facts, that you're not just saying what the consequence will be, but you're saying there's a new way of integrating information, a new way of thinking.
okay. Are you saying that you can hypothesize on the basis of a theory deductively, and you can okay, there's two components to this. So one is hypothesizing, which you can do. Well, I don't even know if that's hypothesizing actually. Deductively, and then you can hypothesize inductively, and that's when you induce the theory. Am I right
Yeah,
in saying that?
that's what I would say. The theory you're inducing
Take a
deductively,
theory.
but that's, you take a theory and then prove it, or take one implication of it and see if it's true.
Right. Okay.
Like if this theory
Okay. I
is
think that's where I
true,
was confused. All right.
if the theory is true, therefore this will happen. That's hypothetical deductive.
If this theory is true, then this will happen. Right. But uh, yeah, and that's what he calls it, actually. He calls it the hypothetical deductive method. But I
Right,
guess
that's common.
from that second interpretation, he doesn't include, so you can you can apply the hypothetical deductive method, but part of the
Yeah.
hypothetical deductive method can include induction if you're inducing the theory. Is that?
Well, I would argue that the second one is not hypothetical deductive. The first one is, second one is not.
Okay. Anyway, that's what he called it. So
Yeah,
it was a spoken lecture,
it's
so I don't
right.
know how precise
In
it'll
broad
be,
parts,
but
correct. That is hypothetical deductive method. The
uh,
second one is a different theory, or it's not hypothetical deductive. The second one, that's all. It's
okay.
correct.
Oh, okay. I
You're
see what you're
correct.
saying.
It's,
So there's just inducing a theory, and then
yeah.
science, which we have no explicit method for, but the standard of proof of that theory is the hypothetical deductive method. Am I
No,
right? And that's the okay.
I'm just saying it's one way to figure out the truth of a theory, or to figure out the truth of a theory. But it doesn't tell
Oh,
us
okay. There are more.
what theories. Yeah, within philosophy of science, there might be others. Some people believe this is the only way to do science.
Right.
Others believe it's a way. Others believe it's doesn't lead to knowledge. So
Okay.
it's just one theory he's offering, which
Right.
is a well-known one. It's
Got
not
it.
one he made up.
Right.
But the inductive way of doing it is not hypothetical and deductive. That would be something else.
But the way he's doing it is not hypothetical deductive. Or my second
It is.
interpretation. My
The
second
second interpretation is a different theory.
Yeah, okay.
It's a different method, that's all.
Got it.
They're different methods. The hypothetical deductive is hypothesizing, taking a theory, and what would be the case if it were
Okay.
true. That's
All
one
right.
method.
And
Hypothesizing
then,
inductively, that would be a different method, which I'm claiming is important for discovering new theories.
okay. But hypothesizing inductively, the standard of proof for that is going to be either hypothetical deductive method or other ones which he didn't mention, which you mentioned. You said there were others. So am I right then? Have I arranged that in my head properly? So you can hypothesize inductively, and that's what, let's say, Newton did that.
Yeah.
And then in order to, okay, standard of proof, now I'm confused. So a standard of proof is reached at by induction, is itself and is reached at by induction. And the way we prove it, or the standard of proof then becomes hypothetical, deductive, or other. Have I arranged, am I thinking about that correctly?
Well, I would say there's theories. First off, there's theories, which, and
Okay.
with those theories, we hypothesize about theories.
Okay.
From those theories, we can validate different hypotheses, assuming the theory, or we could validate the theory, which is including many hypotheses.
Okay, so this is induction. You hypothesize about new theories, and then, or
Well, I'm trying to say that you could induce a hypothesis in the sense that, well, you don't induce a hypothesis because it's what you set out to prove,
right,
or set out to demonstrate.
right.
It's you have the theories, then you have the hypotheses, and then you have, and the hypotheses are specific claims like Newton's theory of gravity, or proposes that anything you drop will fall down, say. So that's his theory.
Right.
You gotta test those hypotheses that are based on the theory. And that would be deductive in the sense that he has the theory already. He's just saying, if this is true, this has to be true. This next thing has to be true. If gravity is true, all things will fall towards the earth.
And then,
if that's true, you test it.
where in this process is the standard of proof?
Standard proof, I think, would be, standard proof is just how do I express this?
I understood that the standard of proof was the hypothetical deductive method, based on what my notes are anyway.
The standard proof.
Actually, he says here, sorry, I missed it. Look, it's here. He says, how do you deal if there's no theory of induction? So I've missed something up in the way I'm thinking about this.
Yeah.
Because he says, given no theory of induction, how do you deal with inductive generalizations? And he says, apply tests by taking instances of every possible category you can think of. This may apply only to philosophy. My notes are pretty bare bones. And show the generalized application to that category, reduce it and integrate it to the greatest extent possible with other knowledge. Okay, so the standard of proof isn't any specific hypothetical deduction. It's what he's saying here, which is as many hypothetical deductions as you can, relating it to other fields. I think, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's mostly right. I
Okay.
disagree on some details, though.
Okay.
But I don't think it's worth getting into.
Yeah. Okay.
But just distinguish between the theory and the hypothesis. Hypothesis is just something you say about the theory.
Yeah.
Like if gravity is true, the apple will fall when I drop it. Then you test it by dropping the apple. It falls. Hypothesis confirmed. theory still true? Or is theory not disconfirmed?
Okay.
But then you also have to demonstrate, well, is the theory true? That's a different question. And harder is, it consists of many hypotheses. And that's where it gets tricky.
All right.
Is it
I
just a
see.
number? It's not like you get 10 hypotheses proven, therefore true theory. Well, it can't work that way. That's just like saying 10 swans are black, therefore all swans are black. You
Yeah.
don't want to do that.
So that's where this method comes in, right? Like this thing he speaks about, like you've got to do more than just, okay. I got it.
Yes.
Cool. That's interesting. I can see how if you have an explicit method for all of this, you can start to make, you have momentum when you think about these things when you're trying to develop a new theory about something. Even like, even simple things like, for me, let's say moving to a new city, I'm treating it as a hypothesis, which you then test and you have, you minimize risks and all this stuff that you can think about that suddenly makes, even that's just day-to-day living, but I see how it applies to scientific fields as well. Very cool. Okay, we can